Like the shoe.
This thing is cool. It's a car.
Yeah, the hood. With the shoestrings and everything. I mean, that's well done, too. Well done.
So I have this eccentric friend named Jimmy who owns a defunct go-kart track in his town, and every year he opens it for just one day and welcomes anyone who wants to bring a custom-built or modified go-kart. This year is my first year being more than just a spectator, and I'm going to go the practical route and build a Carolina shoe boot go-kart. I picked up a used go-kart, the only qualifications being that it had to be hefty enough to support a really big kid. The geometry works to support a shoe the size of a shed, and I also wanted to make sure that it actually ran. I'd say that's sufficient. Since the boot is going to be very complicated on its own, I don't want to have to fuss with the kart itself too much. Now, what makes this build even better is that I'm not the only one building a boot go-kart. I somehow managed to convince Jimmy DiResta to build one, and he somehow got Derek from Malden to join in on the fun too. So there will be 3 of these at the event. I heard that Jimmy was using foam, Derek was using 3D printing, so I decided to go a different route and build mine out of wood. Now, what wood could I possibly pick for this project? Ah, yes, that's perfect. I decided to go a little bit outside of my comfort zone and use pallet wood for this project for a change. Now, how is this outside of my comfort zone? Well, these aren't hardwood pallets. This is all softwood, pine, and spruce pallet wood, the stuff I usually leave behind at the pallet store. But for this project, it'll be perfect for the lightweight and easy workability. So I start with the outsole of the boot, using tight bond CA glue to hold all of the pieces together on top of my giant piece of cardboard, on which I have sketched a 6-inch grid, along with my go-kart frame to scale, and the perimeter of the 8-foot long outsole. It's built up 4 inches at a time, with each piece getting its edge planed to a custom angle in order to smoothly follow the curve, and then scribe a bunch of horizontal pieces, which is the part of the boot called the welt. Tight Bond 3 is used to hold these in place, since there'll be a lot of stress at this joint as I build up from there. Final piece is the hardest, like the whiskey plank on a boat. It has to be fit to all sides simultaneously, but I get it done, with a few distractions. If I look at either your plate, there's nothing on it?
Well,
alright, you think it's gonna fit?
Yeah.
I don't. Nope, doesn't.
I ate on turkey. Did I?
I don't know, did you?
Yeah.
Do you see turkey? I do. You gonna fit this time?
Yeah.
I don't. I think that's good enough.
Yeah, I think it's good enough.
I'm modeling my boot after the Carolina amp. one of the styles made right here in the US at their factory in Pennsylvania. I grabbed photos of the front, rear, and sides, scaled them, and dropped a 1-inch grid on top. You can see from these that the angles change as you go around the boot, so I need to account for that. Now this build technique is going to seem a little unhinged to you, but hold on, let me explain my logic. And after this, it still won't make sense to you, but it'll make me feel better. So given the need for this to be lightweight yet strong, I naturally thought of a wooden boat. Stitch and glue boat building is just like this, stitching together thin marine plywood and adding epoxy fillets for strength before finishing it with fiberglass. Except I'm using 1/4-inch thick softwood pallet wood, and I'm avoiding using stitches and just using CA glue since there are so many pieces. I also wanted to avoid using any framework so that I can free form it and adjust each layer as I go. Each layer starts by sanding the angle in the top of the previous layer. I cut the pallet slats into 4.5-inch lengths and flatten the long edges. I flatten the edges now instead of doing the full slat because most of the slats are warped, so jointing the entire edge to make it flat would generate a lot more waste compared to doing it now. I know it's free material, but come on guys, it's not like this stuff grows on trees. Each piece is dry fit, and then I use a block plane to both angle and bevel the piece at the same time. Once a perfect fit is achieved, CA glue and activator is used to hold the tile in place. And the same thing is repeated, custom fitting each tile to the angle and bevel at its location. This is one of the more challenging locations, building the top of the toe. I simply built it like an archway, custom cutting each piece to fit, working in towards the center. CA glue is very strong, but brittle, so occasionally joints need to be re-glued. But this glue allows me to very quickly build my boot shape. Epoxy and fiberglass will be what ultimately holds all the pieces together. At least that's my plan at the moment. As I'm building up these pieces, I'm also incorporating the different layers of leather on the boot. With the heel part complete, I mark and cut that to shape. And then I bring out my lasers pew, pew, to establish a level line. A lot of people see these projects of mine and ask me, Jackman, what are you on? But unbelievably, I make these decisions completely sober, and honestly, I think I might be onto something here. As painstaking as this approach seems, piece by piece, this thing is actually starting to look like a boot. At this point in the build, I heard that there was a wooden boot show happening nearby. Crazy, I know. So I had to run over and check it out and see what all the other wooden boots looked like. Oh, wooden boat, not wooden boot. I add an extra wood layer around where the laces will go, plus around the top of the boot, both for reinforcement, but also to give the impression that the wall of the boot is thicker than it is. A BBL for my boot, if you will. Whoa, 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 careful there, Jackman. That thing's still pretty brittle. The shape of the boot is now complete, so next I need to make sure that these 752 pieces will stay forever as a single piece. Yes, I counted. I mix up a batch of Total Boat High Performance Epoxy, mix it with some wood flour, until it is peanut butter consistency. This gets poured into a plastic bag, which turns into a pastry bag to pipe fillets into all of the inside corners. This gives a ton of strength to my shape. Think of it like this shape on a steel I-beam. And after cleaning those up, I add fiberglass tape and epoxy to reinforce the structure even more. And I even add fiberglass tape to all of the flatter, long end grain seams to strengthen them, just without the thickened epoxy mixture. And with all of that reinforced, I now feel comfortable cutting the bottom profile of the boot. Don't think I forgot about the moccasin toe detail. I'm going to add that next, with some thicker pine pallet wood and tons of obnoxious custom bevels, just like the rest of this thing. Always getting asked, Jackman, what are you always listening to on those Isotunes hearing protection headphones? Well, let's listen in.
The big project this week, me and Derek and Paul Jackman, the three of us are making Carolina, Double H, and Phantom Rider boots. It's all the same company. We're making boot Go Karts. So at the Go Kart event, July 12th this year, there's going to be 3 driving shoes. And then Paul and I were texting last night. He's like, how are you building your thing? And I sent him a picture of my thing. He's like, okay, I got it. When you have to create a giant volume, that's the holdup. You don't want to build it out of wood, right? Because it's going to be too heavy. You don't want to build it out of wood, right? Because it's going to be too heavy. You don't want to build it out of wood, right? Because it's going to be too heavy.
What does Jimmy even know anyway? Next, I'm going to stain my boot so that it resembles leather. Conveniently, TotalBoat just developed their own line of wood stains. They have lots of choices, but I chose the provincial flavor for the perfect leather color. This stain is designed to work with all of their other products, so that you can epoxy or varnish over the top of it, which is exactly what I'll be doing. You just apply it and then wipe off the excess like any other wood stain. The fillet acted as a perfect breaking point between the varnish and the raw wood. Check me out, accidentally planning ahead. My model boot has this Carolina Cardinal logo, so I want to add that to mine too. I print out a scaled version of that graphic and use carbon paper to transfer it to the boot. And then using some wood burners, I burn the logo into the boot. It was a time-consuming technique, but I really enjoy how it's embossed, just like the original. Next, it's fiberglass time. This is a pretty tricky shape to glass, so I'm going to break it up into 3 sections. First, smoothing out the glass as much as possible. I mix up some TotalBoat epoxy and apply that to the fabric. The goal here is to saturate the fabric just enough to turn it clear and adhere to the wood, but not use too much epoxy that it puddles, since this can cause the glass to float off the surface. Next is the main section of the boot. One area requires a little bit of extra attention. Once the epoxy starts to tack up a little bit, I slice the glass around the leather seams and flatten it out. The final section is the front and side of the toe, which I do the same way, just overlapping a little bit on each end. Once that all cures enough to be solidified, but still a bit tacky, I add a fill coat, which you can see filling the weave of the fabric that was left behind in the first epoxy application. Next, I need to figure out how this boot shape is going to fit over my go-kart, which I bring upstairs after first replacing the front wheels, back tires, and stripping off the roll cage. We shouldn't be needing that. Fingers crossed I measured this whole thing correctly. Well, I wasn't sure it would work quite that smoothly, but hinging the boot at the toe proved to be a great solution. That'll allow me to access the engine, but also to climb inside to drive this thing, which I guess is Pretty important. Speaking of that, I'm going to have to change the geometry of this thing a little bit to make driving it possible. I want my head to poke out of the boot where your leg would go, so the entire driving position needs to shift towards the back of the cart by a few feet. The steering, well, that's extended with some simple iron pipe with flat flanges that are welded to lock them in place. Now for the seat. Some kind stranger decided to litter one of our beautiful Cape Cod beaches with a bed frame, so I cleaned that up, brought it back home, and used it to create a platform over the engine, which is now my seat. And for this big kid, this is much more comfortable of a seating position than what it had before. Alright, the go-kart part is done. The area around the laces is prepped for some eyelets, which I laser cut out of some nice hardwood pallet wood, and I glue that in place with Thixo Epoxy adhesive. Once that cures, I was able to drill out the eyelet holes and clean them up with some sanding. And smooth out the rest of the boot with sanding, 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 and more sanding. I cut the seam in one location so I can add a tag later. You'll see. And then clean off the boot to prep it for varnish, which is Total Boat Halcyon, a rugged water-based varnish that's super easy to spray. I got on as many coats as I could before race day, and on the morning of the race, I added a vinyl American flag tag on the side, where I'd cut that slot, and the Carolina logo on the tongue, just like the original boot. I was able to acquire this old 1-inch thick boat rope, added some giant heat shrink tubing as aglets, and lowered the boot downstairs, still with some slightly tacky varnish, because we need to get this thing out to New York. Today's the big day.
I'm Jimmy DeResta. We're here at my go-kart track in East Durham. This is the 6th annual go-kart day. The track isn't open during the year. It's only open one day a year. During that day, I get my friends and fans and anybody that wants to make a go-kart come and hang out and show it off. So in the background you see the boot that I made, which matches the boots I'm wearing, and Derek 3D printed another big boot, a double H boot, and we're waiting for Paul to unveil his masterpiece made out of wood. So many people here have never made a go-kart, and the go-kart itself encompasses so many disciplines: welding, engineering, brakes, steering. There's so much to learn by making a... That's the first time I saw Paul's shoe. Good things take time.
Jimmy and Derek, thank you for playing along. Check out both of their boot build videos too while you're at it. And a huge shout out to Carolina Shoe for making all of this possible and supporting my off-the-wall ideas. I've been pitching this project idea to them for years, and they probably finally said yes just to get me to shut up. But they said yes, and that's what matters. Please support them so I can keep creating these projects. Check out the link below to carolinashoe.com along with an exclusive limited time discount just for the viewers of this video. I've been wearing nothing but their boots in my shop for almost a decade now and cannot say enough good things. You definitely need a pair. The whole idea for this hinged on one mental image that was stuck in my brain of being able to just see the top half of my head poking out the top of a giant boot. And it turns out it was even funnier than I had imagined. And seeing people's perplexed reactions to this out-of-place object really makes it feel worth it.
I wish I could go inside.
Oh, that's what it was.
What is this, a parade?
Wow.
How cool is that? That's crazy.
Oh,
I like a don't touch it, don't touch it.